dramatic defeat at the Vitality Stadium to Bournemouth. The Sunday Times front page of their sports section says Bourne supremacy. 95th minute was when Adley scored that winning goal. Mark, extraordinary game at the Vitality Stadium. If you could look at it one way, it was 13 games unbeaten in all competitions for Liverpool going into it, but it masks the fact that the previous 4 before this defeat were all draws in the Premier League. Is the feeling, maybe, of discontent from the Liverpool fans towards Arne Slot maybe just growing a little bit?
I think it is. I think, Liverpool fans will give their manager a bit more time, especially one that's won the Premier League title, as he did last season. But the grumblings from Liverpool fans are that the style of play is boring, basically. It's a bit more predictable than it was last season. It's obviously Jurgen Klopp had this fantastic way of playing, and Liverpool fans had 5 or 6 of the best years of their life watching the Klopp football. Slot came in last year and a bit of a hybrid. He kind of evolved Liverpool, won the title, but still, kept playing the Klopp way a little bit. But this season he's gone back to how he wants to play, and it's just too predictable. It's not as exciting, and it's not getting the results. So, again, a bit like the Thomas Frank situation. If the football's not very good and the results aren't great, then you're going to lose the support of the fans. I think generally Liverpool fans don't want to turn just yet, but as the results keep going like that, a lot of individual mistakes. Virgil van Dijk, again. He's had a bit of a bad season, Van Dijk, and I think at times Van Dijk is untouchable in the sense of criticism. It's always like it's Konaté's fault, or it's Frimpong's fault, or it's Kerkez's fault, but it's usually Virgil van Dijk's fault this season. And yesterday it was, I know it was windy, but still it was his fault. And I think when your best player, your captain, is making mistakes on a regular basis, then that obviously affects the team. And Arne Slot, as much as he's struggling right now with certain situations, if your captain is playing like that, and you can't drop Virgil van Dijk because there's nobody coming to play in his place, you've got a problem. But is that Slot's fault? Is that the people above him who didn't sign Mark Gray? So everybody at Liverpool can take a share of the blame for the situation right now.
And I think, obviously I can't speak for the whole fan base, obviously, but I think a lot of people in the Liverpool fan base are setting their sights more at the sporting directors and the direction of the squad than they are at Slot himself at the moment. And that might change, and I think results like yesterday, as you said, Darmash, that's not going to help, obviously. But I think fundamentally, if you look at Liverpool's squad, it's just really unbalanced. And they spent all that money, and it's a bit of a mess now. And you look at the wingers, there's basically only Salah for the right wing because Chiesa effectively won't play no matter what happens. Slot doesn't want to play him. The other backup winger is Rio Naguma, who's effectively a child, and Cody Gakpo is struggling. So the wingers are weak, and they've lost Diaz, obviously, from last year. Nunez wasn't the most popular player among sort of the wider football fans, but Liverpool fans really appreciated Nunez and what he brought to the team. And obviously, the tragic scenario of Diogo Jota, which nobody could have prepared for, and none of us can ever fully understand how hard that was to deal with. But fundamentally, the squad last year was much better balanced, a much better place to compete than it is right now. And Mark mentioned the centre-back situation. That has to be one of the biggest sort of mistakes made by any club this summer, to not have got that Gakey deal done over the line, get it sealed long before the deadline was even an issue. And to not have that, Konaté's had a poor season. Van Dijk, as you say, is really struggling. They've not got the backup. And also, I think you mentioned it yesterday, Mark, when we were talking about it, Jarell Quansah was sold. A really talented young England international was sold before they got the replacement in, and then they were unable to do that deal. And yes, Palace took it out of their hands to an extent, but from Liverpool's point of view, it should never have got to that stage where it was a few hours to go and a crunch decision.
Just picking up on what Sam was saying there, Carl, Slot seems to be taking all the heat at the moment. We can compare it a little bit to Thomas Frank and what Sam mentioned before. There are a lot of other issues going on at Tottenham Hotspur. But just on that recruitment is, £450 million spent, and yet we are still talking about gaping holes in that Liverpool squad. Should there be much more heat than there is on the people above Arne Slot?
Certainly think so. I certainly think Liverpool's summer window was the equivalent of skipping leg day or not eating your vegetables. They've just avoided 4 or 5 really, really important things within their squad. You took a player like McAllister, who had hernia surgery in the summer, and it took some time for him to get back up to full speed as well. I think he's getting closer to his best, but he's got far too much work to do in central midfield. There was that experimentation to get Ryan Gravenberch further forward, where he was so effective last season as being a holder and a shuttler as well. So this is a team that, because of the signings made, is top-heavy, but also the way Slot is organising this attack. I mean, I've heard many a Liverpool fan go, why is Cody Gakpo getting so many more touches of the ball than our two brand new expensively purchased strikers? So a lot of things to get sorted out, and I'm wondering how Arne Slot goes about sorting it.
I mean, it's a good point you make though, Darmish, because at the start of the season, when a club has a good window, it's like the sporting directors are great. What a network they've got behind the scenes. But when it's not going well, the manager's wasted all that money. And it doesn't really tally, because the manager nowadays, or the coach, has less and less say in who they sign. It's almost like, right, I want this position covered, I want that position covered, and the club will go and buy them. You know, Arne Slot would have wanted a centre-half, he's made that clear, but the club failed to get it. So it's on the club, not him. It's not like 20 years ago where a manager was all powerful and would get the deals done. It's now people above him, and so the clubs can have it both ways, and the sporting directors and directors of football, if they fail to get people in, then don't be surprised if the manager or the coach struggles to get the results they expect because they've left him with an imbalanced squad.
Carl, the Lewis Steele from the Mail on Sunday kind of alludes in a way to how Liverpool's recruitment has gone, because he says Liverpool are the Premier League's answer to Bazball. Yeah. 1 minute they are a joy to watch and look like a team ready to conquer the world and win trophies galore. The next they are anything but, and their performance makes one think another root and branch inquest is necessary. Does that sum them up just at the moment?
I think it's a fantastic summation of Liverpool's current travails. They've unfortunately got a glass jaw right now, and it was a difficult window they had to address. Because Trent Alexander-Arnold was leaving, they had to rework how their right-hand side was going. Also because Andrew Robertson perhaps couldn't get up and down the field in the same way he wanted to as well, they were going to have to rework their left flank at the same time. So that they did that in theory by getting Kirkes and Frimpong, but also the knock-on effect of those signings and how they play had massive alterations on everything. I mean, I was sat with a Liverpool fan watching this game, and they commented about how the balls Mo Salah is getting. He's getting the ball in different areas in the final third, and he's also not getting the passes in the same fluency that Trent Alexander-Arnold get him. He's having to run around a bit more, chase his own touch to get that ball under control, and Salah's not as quick as he used to be, and it's making life easier for Premier League defenders to stop him, which is...
If you look at the big calls that Liverpool have made over the past 12 months, Van Dijk, new contract, hasn't really worked out as planned. Salah, new contract, definitely hasn't worked out as planned. Alexander-Arnold couldn't keep him. That's hurt the team massively. Wirtz hasn't really worked out as planned, although I think there have been signs that Wirtz is going to become good. And Isak, obviously, for various reasons, has not worked out at all. That's 5 massive calls that have effectively all gone against them, and that's where they are now.
Are Liverpool almost paying, and is Arne Slot almost paying for the fact that he did win the league last season? Because if you take this season in isolation, yes, the results haven't been great. They're in the top 4. And if he had started his Liverpool career with a fight for the Champions League places and a realistic chance of getting into the Champions League in his first season, we wouldn't be talking like this, would we?
If he'd have had this season last season, he probably wouldn't have had a second season.
You think?
Yeah, because that's how high the standards are. And obviously on the back of Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool fans are expecting a certain way of playing football, so this couldn't have been his first season. He did a fantastic job last season, Arne Slot. We can't take that away from him. It was a hard job to follow Jurgen Klopp. I mean, if you're talking about following a legend, Arsenal struggled after Arsene Wenger, Man United, as we know, after Sir Alex Ferguson. Arne Slot had the same task after Jurgen Klopp, with a team that a lot of us thought at the time was kind of over the hill. We talked about Van Dijk and Salah at the time, thinking, can he get more out of these players? And he did. But maybe last season was that final burst of everything from that team. You know, that was Van Dijk's best season, Salah, Robertson, etc. That was their peak, and they've now hit the wall, and Arne Slot is paying the price for that.
Hasn't he earned more than just one season, though, off the back of winning a title?
Well, no, because if the results aren't good enough and the fans don't like the football, then no, that's the modern game, isn't it? I mean, let's go back 20 years, yeah, maybe you would have get a second season, but there's so much impatience now among supporters. And like I say with the Thomas Frank scenario, if the football isn't great and the fans don't like it and the results are also bad, then that is a lethal cocktail for any coach, especially now.
The worry for Slot is the further away Liverpool get from Klopp and that muscle memory they had, the more time Slot's had to work with them and impose his methods, the worse they're getting. Over time, it's going in the wrong direction, and I think a lot of last year, and this is to Slot's credit, to be clear, it's not a criticism of him, but a lot of last year, you could see, as Mark said before, a lot of Klopp in that team still. You could see that the Klopp's fingerprint and the years of training and the methods were still there. And it was a nice hybrid between what Klopp was doing and what Slot brought in. But now they're moving further and further away from what Klopp did and more towards what Slot wants. And it doesn't seem to be working at all.
I mean, if you look at go back a year, they lost at Plymouth in the FA Cup. And he obviously made a load of changes, lost at Plymouth. Liverpool fans that I speak to will say to me that was the point, that from that point on Liverpool tailed off, and the way they ended the season, they won the league, and I don't think they won another game after that. So the switch almost like was flicked a year ago, February onwards, and he's not really been able to get out of that rut, which is why they made that big investment in the summer, because the club could see that a lot of the players that were so fantastic in the first half of the season had begun to tail off. But, I mean, to be fair, Sam, when you mentioned the 3 contracts that were up last summer, they couldn't afford to let 3 massive players go. They had to keep Van Dijk and Salah just for kind of the public look of it, because if you lose 3 of your biggest players, that's a massive kind of, almost like waving the white flag, isn't it, to let so many go. But you're right, that now it doesn't look great, but they couldn't lose 3 such huge players at once.
There are mitigating circumstances in this defeat, in that Konate couldn't play because he's on leave due to his father's passing. Joe Gomez gets injured as well. So this is a thin squad. And this is an unbalanced squad that is being made thin due to absence and injury. There are also 2 or 3 things that Arne Slot couldn't have legislated for, prepared for. There was a 7-minute pause before Endo comes on the field to come up.
Whose fault was that?
This is an interesting one in that why are a group of Premier League winners, a team that was the best in the country not too long ago, not recognising the basics of football, which is you're down to 10 men, get the ball off the field as soon as possible. That's not. I don't put that on a Slot. I put that down on a collective funk or brain freeze from a group of players that should know better. For this collection of players that have played this many Premier League games together and winning games together, they are making mistakes that amateurs make, and that indicates to me something isn't quite right above the shoulders.
Just one final question, Sam, before we go to the break. We should mention Bournemouth here. Last week we were talking about Oliver Glasner. He's one of the managers who's going to become available at the end of the season. And the question may be, after some interviews that he had and press conferences that he held, is he actually damaging his chances of getting one of these big jobs? Has Andoni Iraola actually gone the other way? Despite recent results for Bournemouth, what happened last night was Andoni Iraola's Bournemouth. Yes, we are going to go for it no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's absolutely among the sort of most highly rated coaches in Europe, and I think he would be on the list of any club looking to get a new manager in the summer. I do wonder a bit, sort of going back to the Frank point about him being a bit too Brentford for too many people. I wonder if Iraola will be associated with being a bit too Bournemouth. I think also the other issue with Iraola, and I know it's not directly your question, Dharmesh, sorry, but I think you look at it and like his style of play is so intense and it's just hard running. Reminds me a little bit of Postecoglou in that sense, which is not to say that it's all the same, just in the sort of physical demands of it. And I think you see over the course of his seasons at Bournemouth, they paid a price for that with injuries. And I think if I was a top European club with 3 games a week, I think I'd look at him and be a bit concerned for that reason. But he's certainly going to be on the list of a lot of clubs, and I think Spurs had him on their list before as well. So if Frank does go, I think he'd be very much on their list, I'm sure.